Hello and welcome to another Sound Booth tutorial. I'm your host, Daniel Jason Booth. Today we are looking at the mistakes you can make when you're doing your compression. The biggest mistake I think is not understanding how to compress on the mix bus. But it's also a place where if anything's going to sound really wrong compression wise, it's going to be there. And it's super critical to get your settings absolutely spot on when you're compressing the entire mix. And for that reason, a lot of people I understand don't do it. They just leave it up to the mastering engineer, and that's totally fine. But if you want to learn how to do it, it's really not that difficult. And first of all, I'd recommend mixing into your mix bus from a very early point on. I would also recommend mixing at quite low levels because you can hear the volume changes that are happening. And so just to kind of set up this tutorial in a way that helps you maybe hear it a bit better, because I understand that it is difficult to hear and people do struggle with compression and hearing the differences. What I highly recommend is that you turn down what you're listening to as low as you possibly can, and I think you'll understand and you'll be able to hear it a bit more how the compression is working. Because personally I find it's much easier to identify compression problems such as pumping and things like that. So without further ado, let's move on into the tutorial. So I'm not going to show you the settings, but what I will tell you about these two compressors is the two different settings on an SSL compressor, a bus compressor, not the channel strip, and they are volume matched as best as I can possibly get them. And so what I will say is that they are probably both overcooked, but one will sound better than the other. Which one do we start with? So let's have a listen.
Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me be now.
Okay.
Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me be now.
Alright, so what did you notice about the two different settings? And which one did you like? Be interested to know what you think before you see the end of the tutorial. You know, post a comment, let me know. Which version did you like better? Obviously, they're both overcooked as far as I'm concerned. They're both too much compression. So what's the difference? Let's have a look.
Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now.
Usually I wouldn't do anything more than 1 to 2 decibels reduction on the mix bus. Sometimes you can go a bit harder and that's fine. And this, to be quite honest, is not too bad. What have we got here? We've got makeup gain is 3.3 and we've got the threshold set at 0, attack at 30, release at 0.1 milliseconds and a ratio of 4:1. Okay, what about this other one?
Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me be now.
Alright, interesting. So on this one, there's more makeup gain. We've got a makeup gain of about 8 because we're compressing a bit harder. And we've got the release is set to 0.6 milliseconds. And we've got an attack of 1 millisecond. Still, we have a ratio of 4:1 and the threshold is also set at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down my system. Now you may argue, hang on a minute, you've got a limiter on after that. So let's get rid of it. Let's take that out and let's have a listen again, and we'll see which one you like, which one you prefer, and then I'll talk about what it is that you can do to help improve your compression and avoid one of the biggest mistakes, as far as I'm concerned, that you can make, especially on the mix bus.
Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me be now. Floating away like a boy, I say, trying to find my way home in date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me be now.
Alright, so you may have come to the conclusion by this point, if you maybe followed my instructions and you turned down, you would have heard a big difference in terms of the first SSL comp versus the second. The second, in my opinion, is, well, it's so much smoother, and it's bringing the music out, and you know, they're pretty similar settings when you look at the ratio and the threshold and makeup gain. But if we look at the attack and release, the difference between the attack and release has made a huge difference. I think that this compressor here, when that's working, it's actually destroying the mix. And it's destroying it because the attack and the release settings are incorrect, as far as I'm concerned. They're not doing the song justice because the artifacts that they're bringing. And so even without the limiter there, you can hear that. And you might also hear that this one is slightly louder when the limiter isn't there, but that's okay. I think I've kind of made the point that, like, how important the attack and the release settings are. I'll tell you a story. So a few weeks back, I was in the studio. I was in a different commercial studio. I was recording Nicky Rogalski, as it turns out, and another engineer, a good friend of mine, was watching. And so what I did was I put a distressor on Nicky's voice, and the amount of gain reduction was just ridiculous. I think it was about 22 decibels gain reduction. And the funny thing is that if you covered up the meters, it didn't sound like it. Now, my engineer friend, he originally set up the distressor, and I kind of picked immediately that it didn't sound right. And I think, it does to a large extent come down to experience. And I think he was thinking it didn't sound right because it was distorting, and I immediately picked it as being an issue with the attack and the release, and also how hard it was driving into that with those attack and release settings. So you can compress something quite hard, but if the attack and the release settings are wrong, then it's more apparent. It just highlights it, and it just enhances the garbage. Basically, it brings it to the forefront as an issue. I really found it interesting that my friend was a bit kind of taken aback at how much I was compressing. And I explained to him, it's not how much you're compressing, it's actually how much attention to detail you pay to the attack and the release settings. Because if they're wrong, it just sounds wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. Something that I explained to my friend was that as long as the compressor follows the contours of the music, then you're not going to really identify that vocal as being over compressed. What you're going to hear is you're going to hear something that's being compressed on the louder parts and being released at the right times, and get out of the way of the vocal so that it brings up more of the quieter parts that you want to hear. And so, I couldn't stress to him enough how important the attack and the release settings are. But also, additionally to that, this distressor wasn't actually that terribly noisy. And what you can find with some compressors is that they actually bring up more of the noise floor. And so it kind of led to a discussion about compression artifacts and how it's such a taboo to compress things too much. And really, I think there's nothing wrong with compressing too much. What there is something wrong with is when you can hear it. And so really, I think what it's really about is avoiding those artifacts. And so this is a great example of how you can avoid those artifacts. It's only through experience that you can understand what causes those artifacts and be able to remedy them straight away. What I've come to understand over the years is that the only way to kind of reveal that is to drive it harder into the compressor. Okay, let's have a listen.
Floating away like a boy, try to say, trying to find my way home, mean date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. Floating away like a boy, try to say, trying to find my way home, mean date. I'm lost and wanna be found. I'm lost, so let me go now. A hurricane hits you, destroying dreams, breaking apart my life at the seams. I'm lost.
I'd say that I would still choose option number 2 out of these two settings. Listening at that level, there's not a huge difference between them to the average listener, but there's a world of difference between those two.
Floating away like a boy, try to say, trying to find my way home, mean date. Floating away like a boy, try to say, trying to find my way home, mean date. I'm lost and wanna be found.
Drive the signal as hard as you can into the compressor, play with the settings, and try and find settings that sound the best when you've driven it hard into the compressor. Be sure to level match when you're driving it that hard, because you don't want the volume of the compression to influence that. You want to gain match what you originally had or something close to it. And once you're happy with the settings, then you can back off the threshold. And what you will end up with is something that actually follows the contours of what you're compressing. And then it's just a balancing act between how much you push that signal into the compressor and how much you grab of that with the threshold. That's, in a nutshell, how to avoid the mistakes of compression. And it's maybe not an intuitive thing to do, to drive it harder into the compressor to get it to do that, but the compressor will tell you what's wrong, and it will tell you what's even more wrong the more you push into it. That's it for now. Happy mixing, guys. Let me know how you go.